It is a huge honor for me today to be sitting here with my buddy Reese Harper, who is the founder and CEO of DentistAdvisors.com. Dentist Advisors, ADVISORS.com, who also has a rocking hot podcast, the Dentist Money Podcast. Reese, in case someone lives under a rock, hasn't read your stuff, your columns, your podcasts, you have 280 clients in America. What do you do for 280 dentists across America?
Well,
and what year did you start this?
I started in the industry in 2003, but I launched the company in 2007. And we've been going since then, slowly kind of trying to figure out we made a decision to go exclusively dental, and that was a big step for me because most financial advisors kind of work with wealthy people generally, right? Just anyone who's got money. You just ask your friend, do you have some money, or do you know someone who's got money? And that's who you're trying to work with. And for us, it was a pretty big risk to say we're going to put all our eggs in one basket. The name of our company is going to eliminate us from getting interest from people that have money but that aren't a dentist. And so we had to really be confident that we were going to grow and scale and really be able to help a lot of people, because you need to be able to get to a big percentage of the market to have a successful company. And so for us, it was a lot of research, and picking dentists wasn't just a overnight decision. We had a lot of occupations we were kind of contemplating, because we knew that picking a niche market was probably the way that we were going to make a big difference. And if you work with 50 occupations, you're never going to learn enough to give good advice. It's going to be too generic, too watered down, and financial services generally right now is just a big sales game that, a lot of guys end up pushing product and getting compensated through commissions, and they represent insurance companies or brokerage houses, and their advice isn't unfiltered, it's very biased. And so that for us, we wanted to pick one occupation, move to a model where we got paid only from the client. They pay us a fee. We don't get paid from anyone else. And we can tell them exactly how we think and what we believe and what we think they should do. And I think that just promotes a better culture, and it really helped us find our place in the market, so.
I love that new commercial going out where that guy's a financial advisor. And they say, will you trust me to do your work? And he says, yeah. And then he says, here's me a week ago. Have you seen it? He's got the dreadlocks. He's a DJ.
No.
Have you seen that commercial, Ryan?
Okay.
And he's just some handsome devil in a suit and tie.
Okay.
And he's with a client. And then he says, well, here's me a week ago. And he's like some DJ guy, and dreadlocks.
Yeah.
And I think most people think of a financial advisor as like, okay, you work with Merrill Lynch. You work with some brokerage house. You're on commission to unload all this stuff. And, what's the old joke that a financial advisor is someone who'll make commissions on your account until it goes to zero?
Yeah, exactly.
Just burning and churning for their commissions.
Yeah, I think that a dentist isn't just like a normal person, though. A dentist doesn't just have a house payment and a W-2, right? He's got a practice, and his income is a little bit hard to calculate. And usually his practice financials aren't super organized, even if he's very successful. And sometimes it's hard to determine how wealthy you really are. You don't know the value of your practice. You don't know the exact value of all the real estate you own. You have multiple entities and income going through different entities. And sometimes it's hard to figure out if you're making progress or if you're just working harder. And so for us, we've designed we spent a lot of time figuring out a system that would help dentists really get wealthier in a predictable way and help them make hard decisions when their financial ratios are off. So there's just a lot of things that they just can't do, and if the ratios tell us that something's off, we have to make an adjustment. So let's do what I love to do in MBA school, case studies. Okay.
So talk about a case. Talk about a dentist. They contacted you. How much does it cost to become one of your client?
Yeah.
What were some of these hard decisions? What ratios were off? I always feel like the problem with most people is they know what they know, they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
So talk to this person commuting to work.
Well, I think a lot of people. The dentistry, the U.S. News and World Report just came out with a research study last month that was on the top 100 incomes in America. And dentists and physicians were in the top, all of the top 10. Every one of the top 10 was either a dentist or a physician. So they listed it by anesthesia, was number 2. You had ortho and OS were in the top 3. GPs were number 5. endo and perio and
Yeah, they
pedo.
make bank.
It was everyone's
They
making
make
great
huge
money.
money.
So and the interesting thing is that the research data that they're using for that is based off of Bureau of Labor Statistics income, right? So everyone has a wage. Like doctors, the difference between a doctor a physician and a dentist, though, is a physician's usually working for a hospital or some large clinic, right? And so that when they report their W-2, that's usually all of their income. Right? When a dentist, though, reports his W-2 on his pay stub to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, it's usually just his salary. And you're a dentist, you know that that's not all your income. Your salary is a part of your income, but then you have this net income and K1 that doesn't really get reported as a wage. So dentists, in my opinion, are making a lot more than physicians in almost any facet.
Okay, but explain more details that other income.
Here's we go. They have this income, and if you look at their average retirement statistics, though, the dentist is retiring at age 67 according to the ADA, and the average U.S. citizen's retiring at 62. So they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars more than the average person, but they're retiring 5 years later. In my opinion, there's kind of three main problems that go with that, and I'll share an example of a client like you're asking for. But the three reasons it's happening are, one, we've got a lot of complexity with their situation, right? They have debt, they have payroll, they have a business, and all of these things make it much more complicated than just a salary and a paycheck and a mortgage payment. Second thing is that they're getting sold a lot by a lot of different people, stuff all the time. You and me talked about this on our show. You have supply reps and vendors and financial salespeople and realtors and brokers, and all those people are inputs into your life that make you kind of react and do something. I feel like those two components make it just a really hard situation for someone to make progress. So client that we'll meet, let's say for some of our first clients in 2007, you bump into somebody who's making $3 to $175 to $500,000, right? This person's making $400,000, but they have a net worth of negative 200, meaning they're 38 years old, and they're if they sold everything that they had and cashed everything out, including the value of their practice, they'd still owe $200,000, after making $400,000 for almost 10 or 12 years. But they have two houses, they've got a boat, they also have a cabin.
Really? Yeah. They have two houses? Why the hell would they have two houses?
Well, you got to have a place to go once a week, on the weekends.
Okay, a cabin.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then they have a condo that their practice is in, right? And all of this real estate, in some cases, they've got 10% equity or 20% equity. But in the practice itself, the practice was actually worth less than what the debt was on the practice, because they would continue to go and get, they got a cone beam. They had 2 more operatories that were built out. They were borrowed for a CEREC machine. They borrowed to buy the practice in the first place, but the collections never really grew beyond the initial purchase price, and they paid 90% of collections to begin with. So their debt to asset ratio on the practice is 90%. It's completely leveraged, and then they go and buy 2 or 3 more pieces of equipment from vendors and finance that. So the practice is upside down. The houses are leveraged to the hilt, and they're spending more money than what they're taking home. Their taxes are pretty high because they're, of the $400,000 of income, they're spending 35% on tax, and they're living on $15,000 a month, and their debt payments are taking up the rest, and then there's just really nothing to save.
And their stay-home wives buying $5,000 Gucci purses.
Yeah, no, that's
and if you want to hide the purse from her, you just put it in the oven because she'll never find it there because they eat out 19 out of 31 meals. Uh-huh. Is there anybody left out there that doesn't hate me?
So, and that's kind of an extreme example. I wish it was extreme example, and in some cases it probably is, but that's a real person, right? You have the other side of the equation, though, that you have the other side of the equation where somebody can be extremely wealthy and have a really high net worth, but all of their assets are tied up inside of their practice and inside of real estate or a private business that they own. So when it comes to retirement, they've got to liquidate things in order to successfully exit. And that shouldn't, you want to be in a position where you've built liquidity over your career and you're not forced to liquidate things at the end of your career to create that liquidity. And so just having, this particular example I'm talking about over 15 years, 10 years, 12 years, is able to go from a negative net worth to where if they're making $400,000 to $500,000 a year, anywhere from 20 to 30% of their income should be building in net worth every year. So if I'm making $500,000 a year, I should be growing my net worth at $150,000 to $200,000 a year easily, and that just usually doesn't happen. So,
But here's the difference. Here's what I'm hearing in between the lines is whenever I talk to someone like you, you're under a consultant, a financial advisor, on. You're sitting there saying, my clients make $175 to $400,000 a year. That's just not real. The homies that. Everybody using consultants and financial advisors are making big bucks because they use consultants and financial advisors. They never come out and say, well, my clients make between $175,000 to $85,000 a year. Every time I see a dentist making $175,000 a year or less, they say, well, I'm not going to pay a dental consultant. I'm not going to pay a financial advisor. I'm going to do it all myself. And then I come back 5 years later and say, okay, look, you have nothing to show for it. He's got clients. I mean, he's just rolling off like, now they're making $400,000 or $500,000 a year. My question is, are you ever going to make $200,000 a year? The reason they're making $400,000 to $500,000 a year is because they use consultants and financial advisors. It's the same thing with implants. These guys that shop online and buy a mail order dental implant, they say, well, I got the implant half price. Yeah, and you didn't place any last month.
Yeah.
But the guy that's paying bank through, I don't give a shit what kind of titanium you use, but you're paying bank from some high cost deal because there's a rep in your city, and they're coming by and they're connecting you. Say, hey, Friday, let's go to happy hour with these two other guys that are these guys are buying $15 a month for me, and then you're talking to them, and at the end of the day, the month, the year, the 2 years, the 3 years, you're just getting her done.
Yeah.
So the guy that paid more money for an implant with a rep is now placing 10 a month, and the guy's saving money. So it's all about relationships. And I think that I put you in the category of a personal trainer, and the fact that you're just accountability. You're just going to get her done. You're the guy that's hounding these guys saying, hey, what's going on? You got to put this, you got to save. Because if you don't have a personal trainer knocking on your door and you're fat, is it working for you? Are you saving money on personal trainers? If you don't have a financial advisor, a dental consultant, how often are these clients, these 280 dentists, how often can they call you, talk to you?
Well, we don't. We have
an
app on our phone that lets them. It's a walkie-talkie, so we're unlimited access at any time to the client. The reason we do it that way is that a lot of guys play phone tag with their consultants or financial advisors, and when they have something in their head, we want them to just record it right there and get it down. So they'll ask us a question on their phone. The advisor gets a buzz on his phone. When he's able to check it, he listens and records back the answer. And so it's just a constant 24/7 access as they need it. But the thing
Did you program that yourself?
That's a third-party app that we built into our system. But yeah, we didn't build that part of our app on our own. The part that we've built is every month that we've created a subject that we know that needs to be reviewed. A lot of dentists know their general numbers. They know their collections. They kind of know what they make. But there's about 82 to 84 individual numbers that dentists need to track, and we track those numbers for them. Like the payment on their actual mortgage, we track that. We track their spending at home every month. We track their exact loan payment on every debt and their exact payment to taxes to their state and to the feds. We track all these individual numbers, and then we create ratios out of them. And there's 12 ratios that we care about more than any other numbers. And those 12 ratios, we assign one ratio to each month of the year. And during that month, our analysts and our financial advisors are taking all of our clients and researching those ratios, calculating those ratios for each person, and then comparing those ratios to every other client that we work with and saying, for example, this month we're calculating a ratio called practice term. It's our PT ratio. We appraise or value, we do a valuation estimate. Appraisal would probably be done if you were going to sell, we do a formal appraisal. But this is a valuation estimate using patient count, collections, and net income data to come up with a valuation for your specialty. Then we divide that number by what you spend per calendar year on personal living. So if someone's practice is worth $750,000 and they spend $250,000 a year, then their PT ratio is a 3. Meaning if they sold that practice, they could basically live on about 3 years, if the money didn't grow, on all of their practice equity. And we compare that ratio to every other client in our database and say, for your age, 47-year-old, you have about the right amount of practice equity on your balance sheet. The reason that's an important ratio to calculate is that if you're an investment advisor and you're trying to decide how to invest someone's money, and they're about to get this big practice sale at age 65, right? You need to know how much money they're going to get and how long that could last them, so that when you're investing money today when they're 45, you're not investing so that they can withdraw the money at 65. You're saying when they're 65, they're going to have this chunk of money from their practice sale. It'll last them about 5 or 6 more years. So really, my investment time horizon is longer than what a normal financial advisor might think. A normal financial advisor won't take into account the practice equity and the practice valuation as part of their investment plan. And so during this month, April, that's what we're focused on with the clients. We send them a nice report, it's 8 pages long. That 1 page is the only one they need to look at. And it's really even not for the client. It's for the financial advisor. So we email the financial advisor and carbon copy the client on it and say, here's your ratio, here's where you sit in our benchmark, you're high or low. And the financial advisor then reaches out on his walkie-talkie, tells the client what he thinks. The client gets back to him and says, I want to make this adjustment. I want to make this adjustment. So every month of the year, we do a different subject. January's liquidity, February's spending. Anyway, we keep going down the list.
Slow down, homie. January is liquidity.
Yeah, so liquidity.
What's February?
In February, this year, we did what we call risk rate, RR.
Oh, well, back to what was the one you just described?
Practice term.
Practice term.
We just did that in April.
Yeah. So what is the average? What should the ratio be? 3?
Well, the ratio depends on someone's spending.
Right.
It should be. We want it to be. Ideally, you'd want it to be closer to 7 or 8. That's a really healthy place.
And 1/3 of divorces is over money, and 1/3 over substance abuse. So the most current research now is that a lot of the substance abuse is because you're living in a rat cage, not a rat park.
Totally.
So the money could be driving you to drink. So who's the problem spender? Is it the dentist or is it the spouse?
Well, I think it's probably something that is it's mutual, because the dentist if it's a spending problem, then we'll be able to know that based on comparing. A lot of spouses like to blame other spouses for spending problems, when sometimes it's the dentist that can't stop spending money inside the practice, and sometimes it is the spouse. I think that the knife cuts both ways,
So the Gucci purse at home is the shiny object laser CBCT CAD cam.
Yeah, and I don't think
digital impression.
It's probably not fair to point fingers too much. I like to use the data and say if the family's objectively spending more money than they should, we'll cover that during July. And July, we'll look at their burn rate. We have a dashboard that tracks personal spending. It links all the credit cards.
Don't you have all those on your shows? Where is that?
Yeah, you want to look at it again?
Yeah, pull it up.
So the personal spending month's actually a really important one, because that helps us get a benchmark to calculate a lot of our data. A lot of financial advisors don't calculate personal spending. They just ask the client what personal spending is, and then they go with that.
So here's the 12-month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Making it bigger so I don't have to put my readers on for my... Okay, so January. Let's go through this. January, liquid term.
Yeah.
Was that a typo? Was it a liquid perm?
No, I wish.
What's a liquid term?
So we have 2 types of ratios in our system. We have liquid terms. We have terms and we have rates, okay? So a term is a measure of years that someone could last on a particular type of asset on their balance sheet. And liquid term is all of your liquid stuff. That means bank accounts, that's practice and personal checking accounts, and any investments that are not in a 401k, that are liquid. That could be like a bond or a mutual fund.
Not in a 401k, because you'd have to have a payment penalty to take it out.
Yep.
So you're talking about stocks, bonds, cash, savings.
That's
stuff that money you can get to today.
Quickly. Yep.
Yeah, quickly.
And that's a liquid term. So you take what your spending is, which we track. The annual spending
inside the office or spending at home.
At home.
Okay.
So whatever you're spending at home in a year, we know that that's what you'll keep doing. We know that people on average continue to spend what they're currently spending, and so we take the number that they've spent on average we take the last 3 years of data if they've been with us for that long. If not, we have to take the most recent month or the most recent year and annualize it, right? So we take that annual spending number and we divide it by their total liquid bucket, all of their liquid stuff that we just listed, and then we come up with a term. That measures the number of years that someone could last off their liquid securities if they were to spend it down
on
today.
The periodic table, which I love your artistic playing into my homies who love science, it's looking like a periodic table. What does a periodic element number mean, 5.3?
That's years.
That's what the goal is, or
that's that person.
Oh, that's that person.
Yes.
But should the
and the bottom below there is the benchmark.
Range? So that's the range, 2.1 to 6.4.
Yeah, for that.
3.6 would be
median,
the average,
the
median, or the mean.
This is
the
this one would be the average,
or the mu.
This is the average. No, this is the average.
I'm just harassing you from my
like
501
they would know, okay?
So the range is 2.1 years to 6.4 years. 3.6 would be the average.
Yes.
5.3 is what their goal should be.
That's that person's current position. So this is what you are, and this is the range.
Have you ever met taking on a client where you got the couple to just actually cut back their spending?
Oh yeah, it happens with every client. Almost every client, bar none.
Nice.
When we are because burn rate is what we cover in September. That's their personal spending.
Because when they start spending less and they start living a more minimalist life,
that goes up.
They will have less stress and be deeper in love.
No question. It really is true.
Okay, so let's go to February.
Okay, so
now this is a short month, so
yeah.
So this must be a low priority thing. It's only a 28-day
So in this, we calculate their total income for the prior year. So we take salary and net income, and then we add back depreciation and amortization. Those are fancy words for money that they really got, but from a tax standpoint, it looks like they didn't touch it. So what they made isn't on their tax return. You have to add back a couple of things to really know what someone made.
Deferred taxes, depreciation.
Amortization and depreciation.
Not deferred taxes.
Deferred taxes wouldn't count.
Okay.
No. So we take their total income, and then from that we say, how much last year did you actually save in anywhere?
I'm sorry, I want you to go back because these guys haven't had financial accounting manager.
Right.
Explain the why their income is less because of depreciation and amortization. Because you were talking about the physician numbers are showing their salary to the Department of Labor,
yes,
the Secretary of Labor, and the dentists are showing their
same thing, the salary, but they really didn't only make that.
But they're not showing the depreciation, amortization,
or the net income on their from their company, right?
So explain. So
let's say I collect $1 million, and
see, there you go again. You're used to these clients that do. They
let's
never
collect
say
600.
Okay, this guy collected 675 because you're used to the smart people that usually always do $1 million.
So
let's go back to $1 million.
Let's say I collect 600. Let's do that example.
No, let's do $1 million because it's easier.
Okay, collect $1 million. Yeah, and my salary that I paid myself through payroll was $200. Okay. But there was money left over on my P&L, and it shows net income. People have probably seen that, and let's say it's 100. It seems like I might have just made 300,000, right? My tax return, let's say it says 300. Really, there's some more money though that I made, okay, than what shows on my tax return. If I buy a piece of equipment for $100,000, I get to write that off. That's an expense. And it makes it look like my income is lower because that $100,000 expense either gets written off in 1 year or slowly over 5 or 7 years. So really what happened is that $100,000 I spent on equipment makes it look like my income was only $300,000, but really it was $400,000. It just doesn't show up on my tax return. And even if you financed that equipment, $100,000 piece of equipment, you still got that $100,000 of money in your pocket. You didn't pay cash for it. You financed it.
And what's the difference for them, depreciation, amortization?
Amortization is when you buy a building or you buy a practice, you get to write that off over a longer period. They call that amortization. And depreciation is when you buy a piece of equipment or something that you are going to use that's less expensive.
So can you say depreciation short-term, amortization long-term?
That's easy to it's easy to calculate. So the whole reason to talk about this though is you got to know what your real income is. Don't think you know what you make. You have to really know what you make. So if you don't calculate the exact number of income, you can kind of feel too good, or you can lie to yourself about how much you're really making and feel like your practice isn't doing that well. When in reality, this calculation here helps us see someone's true income, and then the savings rate is the percentage of that income that they actually had left over at the end of a year. The total amount of money that was left over after spending, after debt, after taxes, that's what's left over.
And the range is, talk about the range.
The range is anywhere from 0, unfortunately, or
right
negative.
Here it says these are your, it says 6.2.
This is a sample.
So this is 6.2 to 24.2.
Yep.
With the median
of
12.3.
So if you had a savings rate of over 30% of your gross income, you probably should take a vacation and enjoy life a little bit. Okay? That's a really high savings rate. If your savings rate was...
But isn't this showing your exact range for your company's 280 clients?
No, this is a sample to make someone not feel bad. I could show you the exact one. This is like a sample.
You should make it accurate.
Well,
no, because then it'd be more... You should make it accurate. Have you talked to Tom Giacobbe about writing an article
we've
on
got a sample prepared for all these elements for him. I'm going to give it to him in the next month.
Yeah, and have that be the real range of... Because
this was last year's, so it's close.
Okay.
But savings rates... have improved a little bit over the last 12 months. So it's really close. Anyway, the savings rate itself is that's the percentage that people have left over. Okay. Then risk rate is a different
Now we're
topic.
into March.
We're into March. Risk rate measures the total amount of insurance that people have compared to what they should have. So if someone's at 80%, that's 20% less than what they should have, given their net worth and all of their assets. It's a very complicated calculation.
Okay, so are you talking about disability?
This incorporates disability insurance, it incorporates life insurance, and it incorporates liability insurance. So if I get sued...
liability sued.
Disability if I can't work or I get sick,
Yeah.
and life if I pass away.
Mm-hmm.
So will my family have enough money to maintain their standard of living the way we're currently spending if something happens to me because I'm sick, if I pass away, or if we're sued, will we still have enough net worth? Is our net worth
So do you
protected?
analyze their disability insurance and their professional liability insurance?
Yep, during risk rate month. I have a full report that
so
is
then
pretty cool on this
what
one.
is this range? 0.64, 0.8, 0.91?
This is a percentage. So 80%, 64%, and 90%.
So if they die, they don't have enough life insurance to
meet
pay
their
off all.
current standard of living.
Okay.
To replace the income they're currently living on. That's how we view life insurance. Someone passed away, we'd want their family to still have the same income.
But isn't it safe to say, though, that you don't have to worry about this? If your wife is hot, she'll just marry someone else.
Yeah, okay.
She'll just marry the next
Yeah,
dentist.
I mean,
another
if you're
week
at
or
least
two.
above our median, it's probably you might be okay. Okay, it's up to the client. Take his approach he wants. Okay.
Okay, so now we're into April, business term.
Yeah, so we call this business term. Sometimes we'll call it practice term. This is the one we talked about. This incorporates any private business and your practice equity. So any private business holding. If you own a restaurant, if you own a media company, if you own a dental practice, 2 locations, this shows us the number of years you could live on your current private equity that you own.
So
based
if
on
you
your current
sold
spending.
everything today based on your current spending habits average over the last 3 years, this is how long you're going to be able to just live off that sell.
Yeah, totally.
That's what we talked about first.
Yep.
Now we're into May, qualified term.
Yeah. This measures the number of years you can live off of your 401ks, IRAs, simple IRAs. We call this qualified assets. Okay, the things that you can't really
the
touch
business
without a
term in
penalty.
April is something you'd have to sell.
Yes.
And the qualified terms is what you already have.
Yes. This is something you'd have to liquidate. If you were to liquidate things, this is how long you could live.
Yeah.
Or if you got a loan against it and spent down the equity.
Yeah.
So, and then June is equity rate. This measures the percentage of all of your investments, okay, that you have, qualified, non-qualified, liquid, that
Everything.
that are in aggressive things that could move up and down a lot, stocks, okay, or private business holdings, okay. This is your risk, how risky your portfolio looks. So I met with someone last night who has, a portfolio that was tilted towards one investment in an energy company. Okay, that would show 100% equity rate, meaning they're highly tilted towards something that is extremely volatile. Someone who's at a 0 is in assets that we'd consider very safe and stodgy. So
tax-free bonds.
Like a municipal bond, okay? So we want to measure how risky someone is for their age and compare that to their peers to find out if someone's psychologically just addicted to risk, and we see that a lot.
How's the stock market looking to you now?
The stock market never looks good or bad. It is only statistics for us. The way we look at it is depending on the exact weight of someone's portfolio, how they're investing it. We can measure the exact peak to trough that they'll experience. We just don't know when that's going to show up.
Let me ask you a question a different way. If someone was on a 10, 20, 30-year horizon, what rate of return would you assign to, okay, obviously a tax-free bond. I mean, obviously a government bond's 5%. A lot of people call that the risk-free rate. What would you put for the stock market now?
Well, since 1926, I'd break it up into two categories, and I'd break it up just by saying that you have companies that are very large, and those companies will have averaged around 10.1% since 1926. Clear
like
through
very
today.
large, like the Dow Jones Industrial Average or
the S&P 500, right?
Okay, you go S&P 500. You put that at 10.
Yeah, that's what it has been over since 1926 till today. Right now,
okay, 10.
It's about 10 to 10.1.
And when I got out of school, that number was 12.
It could have been. I think maybe over a shorter period.
I think 1929 to when I got out of school in 87.
Could have been.
I think it was closer to 12.
Could have been slightly higher.
But,
you shouldn't expect that 10% rate, though, moving forward for a lot of different reasons. And that's for large companies. Small companies, when you get smaller in the market, those companies have a higher expected growth rate. Right now, it's over 13%. So if you were in the bottom 10% of the U.S. stock market since 1926, it has almost 300 basis points or 3% higher expected annual rate of return than the large companies. If they move up and down more, meaning they have a higher what we
volatility,
call higher standard deviation, and then they're more volatile, and then the large companies have a slightly tighter band. And so what you want to do is make sure that your portfolio is actually replicating those types of assets, though. You don't want to be in one position or 6 positions thinking you're in stocks. Because being in stocks, to me, means you have replicated the world's market, the world's stock market index, which isn't just the United States. The United States is only about half of the world's stock market. The other 50% of stocks in the world are distributed between Europe and Asia and Latin America and the emerging countries. So emerging markets are 15 to 18% of the world's market, and developed countries like Asia and Germany and France and Canada, those are about 35% of the world's market. And so if your portfolio isn't replicating the world's stock market, you're taking a gamble. And what you're probably emphasizing here is in 1987, the United States had a larger percentage of the world's market than it does today, and that'll keep shrinking as time passes. The expected rate of return of the whole world's market is a little higher than just the S&P 500 because it's incorporating smaller countries and smaller companies into the index. And so your portfolio really should reflect the whole world's market, not just the United States or the Dow Jones, which is only 30 stocks in the United States. I mean, you think you're diversified when in reality you should be owning thousands of stocks, not dozens of stocks. And so, anyways.
And those emerging markets have much easier because all Africa, Asia, and China have to do is just get every single person a washing machine, a dishwasher, a car.
It's easier to grow.
Oh, it's so easier because when you start real low and all you have to do is take existing technology that was out 10, 20, 30 years ago and get it to everyone.
Incorporate it.
That's surefire rapid growth.
Yeah.
Whereas we got to invent the next iPhone.
Yeah, it's a lot hard, and it's harder because we're a $22 trillion market. I mean, we're a massive stock market, and to move that dial, it does take more innovation and a lot of effort. But mathematically, you know, what a lot of economists will forecast is that since interest rates have been low since the 80s, and money has been more fluid, it's allowed the stock market to grow at a higher rate than it might be able to grow in the future. It probably will be slightly more volatile, and the rate of growth might not be quite as high as it's been since 1926 because we won't likely have low interest rates for the next 30 years like we've had up until now. It doesn't mean that stocks won't have a premium over bonds. It just might not be as high as what they used to be. And so it's important to remember. That's what we calculate in June. I mean, June is the investment month for all our clients where we're saying, you know, your equity rate, you know, is X, and we're really calculating that for everyone and comparing your portfolio to different clients. And each client has a model portfolio, and we've got 40 client models. And so depending on what rate of return we need to get, that's the model we'll select for each client. Because no one likes to take more risk than they have to, and no one likes their account to move up and down more than they need to. It's just, if you're really behind schedule, sometimes you need more growth. if you're on track, you can afford to not have it move up and down as much, and it's a lot less stress. So anyway, that's June.
Okay, so we're through half the year.
Yeah.
So now we're into real estate.
Yeah. So real estate measures the number of years you could live on the equity that's inside of your property if you were to borrow against it, or if you were to sell it.
You talking about home or the property?
All real estate.
All real estate. Well, that's a very common question these young dentists get. I just got out of school. Doc's selling a practice. I want to buy. He's offering me two assets. The practice is X bucks. The real estate's a separate transaction.
Yeah.
Land and buildings this bucks.
Yeah.
To buy or not to buy?
Well, what I look at is everyone's net worth is made up of only 4 components of assets. You have your liquid stuff, you've got your practice equity, you got your qualified assets, and your real estate.
Okay, now go back through those and just give a little bit longer definition.
Okay, so remember...
I got 4 things, just a little bit.
I have my liquid stuff, which is my cash and my bank accounts and my investments, my bonds and all that. That's liquid term. All these are called the term, right? So I got my practice term is my business equity and my practice equity and everything.
That's what you could sell your practice for.
Yep. And then I have my qualified term, which is all my 401ks and SEP IRAs and simples.
Stuff that's not really liquid because you're going to pay a penalty to get out.
Get out of it.
So liquid term is you could probably you could round all that cash up today.
Yes.
Business term, that's going to take a while to sell that stuff.
Totally.
The qualified term is, you could probably liquidate today, but you're going to pay an IRS penalty.
Yes.
And then the fourth one was?
Real estate term.
Real estate term, and you're talking about house or business.
All real estate you own. Investment
estate.
Property, rentals, business, multi-tenant, development, land, farmland, anything.
Do you recommend putting your girlfriend on the side up in an apartment, or would you actually buy the condo?
So those are the 4 places it could go. So your question is, do I do this? I would look at someone's balance sheet and I'd say, our goal for every client is this total term. Is the sum of all 4 of those. So your total term is adding up liquid, adding up business, adding up qualified, and adding up real estate to see what the total is. If your total, you want to make sure real estate isn't a disproportionately high percentage of your total, because it's not an easy asset to liquidate.
Because you never want to get your money too far from cash.
Exactly. You want to have the bulk of your net worth in liquid and qualified. The lower percentage of your net worth in business equity and real estate.
In fact, can I tell you on this real estate term, one of the things that's really fueled Heartland Dental so much, Rick Workman, is because all the big dentists that were doing $2 to $4 million a year, they had no liquidity.
Yeah.
A kid can't come out of dental school $350,000 in debt, be 25 years old, and buy a practice for $2, $3, $4 million.
Totally.
And a lot of them had 8, 10,000 square foot buildings. The only guy that could write him a check was Rick Workman of Heartland.
Yeah.
So I look at all the biggest cows on the ranch went to Heartland purely for liquidity.
Yeah. And that happens a lot.
So you're saying that real estate should be 20. So back to this young homie.
Yeah.
She's 30 years old. Should she buy the practice and the real estate, or just take the practice and sign a 10-year lease? What should her real estate? Because she's already in a home.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of business ownership using real estate. You're not a big fan of the dentist owning their dental office. I would let the location itself trump the decision. If the location itself needs to be owned, own it. I mean, if the location, if it's optional to be in a location that's just as good or the same location and lease it, I'm still a fan of leasing it.
Okay, why are you a fan of Okay, let me just say real quick before I forget is, I've seen so many people, there's in a hot location in retail next to a big box grocery store or something.
Yeah.
But they felt bad because they didn't own it.
Yeah.
And then they found a building 3 blocks away in a shitty location.
Yeah, it's a bad
And they want to
plan.
own it. Now their visibility went to 0, and now they're paying a lot more money in marketing, trying to get visibility in the mailbox or the yellow pages or a website or Google Ads or Facebook or Twitter. So you should be in the best location first, period.
If it costs more to be in the best location, be in the best location.
Because that'll lower your marketing
advertising expense. If your new patient flow is free because of your location, I mean, just go with it, dude.
That's the business. The business decision is location.
Every
Get the
time.
best location.
Now, if I had a choice to not tie up more money in real estate that I'm already going to have, because most of these guys are going to have a pretty nice house, and they're going to have a lot of equity in it, and it's going to be a meaningful percentage of their net worth. And when they get to retirement, they're going to be kind of in a position where they have not enough liquid, not enough qualified. It's all in a business. It's all in their practice equity. We've got to liquidate something. I'd rather be in a spot where I could get the tax benefit of leasing, keep cash in my pocket, not dump it into my down payment, not be stuck with property taxes, not be stuck with maintenance dues, not repairing my leaky roof. Because in 20 years, that condo you bought's worthless anyway. No one's going to want to buy it unless you put a bunch of money into it to sell it. So it's not a real good asset. If you're going to have a multi-specialty, large, development where it's a institutional grade construction and it's a 100-year building, something that's really, really robust, that's a different decision than if I'm going to buy a condo. I mean, these condos, they slap them together with stick construction. They're just not high quality assets. They're usually lower quality than the house you live in.
Well, usually you can say, well, if a doctor, dentist, or lawyer bought it, it's not a high quality any asset.
Okay. So I'm not anti-purchase. I currently own my building right now, but it's not because I wanted to own it over leasing it. It's because I would have had to move locations, and I didn't want to move locations because where I was at was really good for access to the airport and where our clients come in and see us from. And I wanted to own it, and I would have had to move like 6 blocks and didn't want to do that. Now, in the next 5 years, I'd love to sell my building to somebody and lease it back from them. So,
and Rick Workman does that.
Yeah.
He does that for
I think it's
dentists.
smart. And so anyway,
there's dentists where he's bought the land and building out from underneath them. And they sold him the land and building, but they're still dentists.
Totally. Anyway, so just it's a balance question.
Surgeon, I want to do a podcast with him. He's got a rockin' hot nitrous oxide mask. Go get him. Go run, Ryan, run. And
so real estate, it's just that it's all about how much equity of your personal net worth is tied up in it. That should dictate it too.
Okay, so we just did July and October. So now go to August. And this is we're at August right now, which is a very special month because that's my birthday.
Yeah, well,
August 29th.
And
is that why it's green? Because I'm Irish?
Yeah, and it's when we talk about debt, which everyone loves. So this is the percentage of your income that goes towards mandatory debt payments, business and personal combined. Okay? So practice debts, real estate on your primary mortgage, student loans, everything. So if my total income, my $400,000 in the example we were using, how much do I have to service debt with every month? That helps me know how leveraged someone really is. This is a dental-specific debt-to-income debt ratio. We'll call it debt service ratio. And it's really important to know that because if 27.4% of someone's income, like it says here, is going towards debt, that's pretty reasonable. That's still going to allow them to have a savings rate that's north of 20, which is good. If the debt service ratio is 45% or more, that they literally have no decisions that they can make. I mean, there's no flexibility with their decision making. And a lot of guys will go that high on just their primary mortgage, let alone their practice debt and their real estate debt. And you shouldn't have a debt service ratio over 50% of your income. It's just going to kill you.
Yeah, and it's weird because you look at these dentists, you say, okay, dude, you have $1 million home and a Porsche, and I mean, are you Rod Stewart? I mean, are you the Rolling Stones? I mean, what's inside their head?
Yeah,
that makes them think that they should live in a mansion with a race car and a stay-home trophy wife.
Totally. Yeah. So that's debt rate, and during this month, I mean, we're trying to calculate what to do with it. Should we stretch out terms? Should we move from a 5-year to a 7 to a 10, so that we can free up enough cash to actually build some liquidity, pay off one of the debts that it's at a high rate?
And what is your thoughts on 30-year versus 15-year? I mean, if you take the 12 payments a year on a 30-year and just add one 13th payment, you cut it down to 15-year. Are you
it's
a 30? Or are you? What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think of debts in terms of the length, and it just needs to be a ratio. Because if somebody can service, if somebody's bought the right size of home, they can afford to pay it off in 15 years pretty easily. So in an ideal scenario, yeah, you'd want to you'd want to eliminate your debt at a fast rate. But a lot of people don't have the luxury of doing that, and they kill themselves trying to accelerate their debt payment so fast that they never build any liquidity. They don't reinvest in their practice. They never hire a consultant. They never get any help. They don't market effectively because they're obsessing over getting this house paid off or obsessing over paying off their practice debt, when that's not a good business decision. Like, no big Fortune 500 company looks at their balance sheet and says, how can we get rid of this debt as fast as possible? That's our biggest priority. They say, here's the ratio we want to keep, the ratio of debt to assets.
And what is the S&P ratio of debt to sales?
Well, it depends on the industry. I mean, but you're not going to see what we would look at from a dentist. Okay, let's say a dentist should look at his total debt compared to his total number of assets. If his total debt is much more than 60% of his total assets, it's a pretty leveraged position. I don't like to see a dental practice leveraged more than 50% of the total value of the practice. It's just not, you don't have a lot of options. You know, it's a little bit of a decline in collections, or a little bit of a lag in your marketing budget, and you can kind of be in a tight situation. You know, so that's where we try to keep it.
So now we're into October.
September.
Oh, September.
Burn rate.
That's purple, or is that fuchsia?
That's fuchsia, probably. So burn rate's the percentage of your income that you spend on personal living expenses. Okay, that's what it's the percentage of that $400,000 that you're actually consuming. All right, it's what you're taking. It's what you're living on. So we can pay debt with it. We can spend it. We can pay taxes with it, or we can save it. There's only 4 places your income can go.
Okay, say it again.
Save it.
Save it.
Spend it.
Spend it.
Pay debt with it.
Pay debt with it.
And pay taxes.
Pay taxes.
So only can go to those 4 places. So everyone's got a pie chart with 4 buckets. And the ratio that everyone uses those 4 buckets, it dictates when they will retire. Like, that is the number one dictator of retirement, is how those
I disagree. It's not the number one dictator.
No, okay. Well,
it's the number of wives you've had. By the time you've been divorced 3 times, you will die at the chair. The people who die, no, I'm serious. People who retire the earliest are on wife number 1.
Okay.
By the second wife's going to add 10 years to it, and by the third wife, you're going to die with the drill in your hand.
That's a spending ratio, though, okay? It's part of the 4, all right? So we are on the same page. Would say the guy who spends more than 50% of his income on his first wife is not going to retire on time. And we want to keep that at like 30 or 25. Okay.
And when you think about that, doesn't your wife just seem more attractive?
Okay.
Okay, so now we're in October, and I have to.
This is your total term.
I know, but I think October should be orange for Halloween. I don't get why January.
Well,
you need to switch those colors.
We're still in phase 2 of the version 2.
This is confusing.
Okay.
So October you already talked about.
Yep, and that's what the total term is. Adding just all 4 of those up. You're adding up your liquid, to your qualified, to your real estate, and your business equity, and you're getting a total. This is the number. This is probably the most important. This is the most important factor in our whole system, is that October month, because that tells us the exact financial health of the person. That tells us the total wealth of the individual and how close they are to being financially independent.
And what is that average total wealth for your client?
Well, if someone's at a 30, okay, then they'll never outlive their money. If someone's at a 30. Because this doesn't measure how many years it's going to last. This measures the number of years it's going to last if it didn't grow at all, right? If it didn't grow at all, this person could last for 21 years. If it was at a 30, what'll happen is that person will never run out of money. It'll keep growing forever. You could retire at about a 20. We have a book that is like a 30-page guidebook here that is, I'm going to show you one chart here. The only number you need to predict your retirement. This is a book that is really helpful.
Is it a book? Is it an ebook?
It's 70 pages right now, but I haven't printed it. I'm writing a book on this whole elements thing. It'll be done in the next 2 years. But like this chart right here, see this? 0, 10, 20, 30, and plenty. This tells you when someone's going to retire, or if they're ready to retire. If they're less than a 10, they're broke, not enough, basic, very secure, and plenty. So you're probably in the plenty category here.
Oh hell no, I'm broke.
Yeah.
I'm dead broke.
But
the good news is my ex is doing great. She is. She's enjoying her 4 homes.
This is what we measure the rate of change on that one, because we want to get everyone to a 30. Everyone's going to a 30.
Yeah.
And we fail if someone doesn't get to retirement at the right pace. Now, to make this happen, it takes liquidity and spending and insurance and debt and real estate thoughts and spending personally and investment tilts, and then profitability and tax rate are the last two. So in November, we're covering their profitability.
That's office overhead?
Yeah. Yep.
So so if he's listening to you and he says, why is my overhead high? Is there any low-hanging fruit you could tell him why it's high?
It's usually a factor of, in our opinion, it's usually two things. One, the practice isn't producing enough, and so they should try to grow slightly more, because as you grow a little bit more, increase your efficiency. You know, if you're doing 500,000 in collections, it's really hard to get your profit high. If you're doing $1 million in collections, it's pretty easy. And from the overhead side, it's usually payroll is the biggest factor. And
labor.
And this business isn't that complicated. It's either you're not efficient.
What do you think labor should be?
It depends on the specialty. You know, I wouldn't, if it were me as a general dentist, I would probably want to keep my labor cost at under 20% if I could.
Under 20?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that would be labor. That wouldn't be total cost labor. Would that be health insurance, FICA matching,
just wages
uniform,
and FICA matches,
taking them to continue education
That's
courses?
very different. Yeah.
I'm talking about total staff cost.
Well, X'd out from the doctor, excluding the doctor's comp, right? Yeah. I don't want to see my total staff cost above 25% though.
Okay.
Excluding the doctor.
And what would it be for other specialties?
It's going to be slightly less for a pedo practice and slightly less for OS and endo, and GPs are probably going to be some of the highest overhead practices that you'll find. It's the hardest business to run because it's the most complex, and you've got, you know, a production facility and hygienists that can actually make you some money.
Yeah, you know, you go into a dental office and you see the doc put a lockbox of the thermostat, and it's like, dude, it ain't your electric bill.
Totally.
It's labor. It's people.
Totally.
And when you have an idea, it's got to make your. I mean, if you pay your staff $1 and they do $1, you're at 100% overhead. You pay your staff $1 and they do $2, they're at 50%. Everything. Every time someone pitches you an idea, the first thing you should think is, what will this do to the productivity of my labor?
Yep. Yeah.
And if it's not making your staff do everything faster and more productive and see more patients,
yeah.
If you can't control your number one cost, which is labor, and a lot of people say, well, you know, I built this office. And I built this office, so the rent, I've already paid the rent.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna get another associate and be open twice as many hours because my rent's already paid for. It'll cut my rent costs half.
Yep.
It's like yeah. But if you maximize the efficiency of your rent or mortgage, but that makes your labor inefficient,
yes.
and they're overlapping and overtime or whatever, and it makes your labor inefficient, you just sunk yourself.
Yeah, totally.
I don't care about mortgage rent efficiency. I care about labor efficiency.
Yeah. So anyway, every month we're doing one of these subjects. Like this is the one we just did in April. This is a sample. This is an actual person, so I won't say names. But see, this is the subject we're covering during this month. That's his practice term. Here's his personal scorecard. Okay, that's his scorecard, and this is hold on, sorry, we got to back up and give you this one. I just want you to see this so you can understand it.
Have you ever had a dentist try to get you as a client? You recommended that he just changes his name and move to Jamaica and assumes another identity. Okay, this is Dentistry Uncensored. I asked you at the very beginning, what does this cost? And you dodged the bullet.
No, it's easy. We just charge $495 a month.
$495 a month.
Yeah, if it's a single or 2 location practice. If it gets to like a multi, like 7, 8, 10 location, 15 location,
so $500 a month. So half a crown a month. So 2 MOD composites a month, and you're going to get all this number. And of your clients, you know, the accountability personal trainer deal. How many of those 280 improve their financial trajectory with your services?
Well, within the first 12 months, if we can't, like I won't take somebody on if we don't know for a fact that we can move the dial much faster than what we're charging. So, I mean, we know that if we look at our data, we're confident that our client's average retirement date is going to be far earlier. And we have clients retiring far earlier than the industry average. So it's just, and far earlier than the average U.S. consumer. You know, our process makes sure that the little things that they're going to neglect happen.
Well, it's one of those things. If you just the dentists are smarter than smart.
Yeah.
They just don't focus on this. Last question: why were you named after a Reese's peanut butter cup?
My favorite candy.
It's mine too. Hey, Reese, seriously, I know you. I know everyone that knows you. You're a damn good guy. You're honest. You're trustworthy. I really appreciate what you're doing for dentistry. I appreciate what you're doing for your clients. And I'd really appreciate it if you guys would get your financial house in order, because then you'll be more happy and healthy. And then you can go on to all the bone grafting courses from Jamaica to Brazil and buy all the shiny toys and boats and but just get your house in order, get poised for growth, or as Rick Kirshner would say with Comfort Dental, get mean and lean. Focus on this like you focused on calculus and trig and physics and geometry and biochem and pharmacology. And unlike all that crap, which you'll never use, you're actually going to use this stuff. Thanks, Reese, for all you do,
pleasure,
buddy.
Man.
All right.
Thanks,
Ryan.